right, welcome to the Armchair Commanders podcast. My name is John,
And I'm Jack.
and this week we are reviewing the film Operation Mincemeat, produced by Netflix, and we're reviewing this film at the request of our guest this week, Sarah. Sarah, if you'd like to say hi and tell the folks a little bit about yourself.
Um, Hi, my name is Sarah. I'm also known as the History Chick 1941 on social media. I love to share history, so I created the History Chick. My, I guess, specialty is World War II through the Global War on Terror. Um, but I like to make history fun. I like to share history with everybody. I'm still learning too a lot of stuff as well, so it's a fun learning experience for not only me but as for people who do follow. And I run a live series called History Behind the Page, where I interview other history nerds, content creators, authors, anything in between, just people who love history. So that's just a little bit about me. I don't know if I breathed in there or not.
It sounded fine. So, when did you start getting into the kind of like popular or like social media history thing?
Well, I started my page actually 2 years ago on the 7th. It was the 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, and I was actually sitting at my parents' house visiting, and I wanted to do an 80th anniversary post, but when I do it on my personal stuff or whatever, people just roll their eyes and, you know, they're not really interested. So I was like, well, do you know what? I'm getting back, my passion into history and stuff. So I'm going to create a history page. And so I did. And my first post was about Pearl Harbor. And then, yeah, now we're here. And that's how the History Chick was born.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now the real question is so we recently did a review of the movie Pearl Harbor, and what's your take on that film before we get into this review?
This is
Okay.
our litmus test.
So Pearl Harbor, I mean, that came out in what, 2002?
Oh, 2001. It was a pre
2000
9/11 film.
pre 9/11 film. For the time, especially, I was in 2001, I was 13, so I was into history then, but not, I was, more Hollywood, I guess. And I don't think it was an awful film back then. Where I am now and watching it again, it's it's a romance film, so it's a romance, it's
Yeah.
that's what it is. The older you get, I feel like with history, the more you want the actual, like, what am I trying to say? The actual historicalness of the film, not subplots and different stories that have nothing to do with, like the title of the movie Pearl Harbor. We want to know all about Pearl Harbor. But, it was back then it wasn't good. I haven't watched it in probably like 15 years. I don't even know the last time I watched it, but it's a romance
Well,
movie. It's,
you're better off for it.
it's,
So
I, yeah, I honestly, it's not even on my playlists or watch lists on any of my streaming services. So I think that says a lot.
that's fair.
Yeah, but back in the
So
day, it was a everybody loved it back
no,
in the
it
day.
absolutely.
But
I admitted on our review of it that when I was a kid watching it, it was one of my favorite movies. But
mm-hmm.
I had the tendency just to skip from like one action scene to the next, so
Yeah.
that kind of helped out.
Mm-hmm.
But going into the movie at hand, Operation Mincemeat. Uh, I know we had tossed around a couple of different ideas when we were chatting, and ultimately ended up on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what made you go with this film for your choice?
So over the past year, I got really into deception tactics, and that's when I first discovered the Ghost Army in World War II, which did the deception tactics, the inflatable tanks for uh, the invasion of Normandy. Sorry, I'm tripping over my words. And that led into a rabbit hole, and I discovered Operation Mincemeat, and which was a sub operation underneath different Operation Barclay, which was the British side of the invasion of Sicily is what it was. It was their deception tactics. But I discovered it, and I read Ben McIntyre's book Operation Mincemeat years ago, and then I got excited when they made a movie about it. I just went on a rabbit hole about it, and espionage and deception and spies are so intriguing to me. So
That's fair. And Jack, as we usually like to start off, what did you think of this film?
It was good. You know, a lot of planning went into this, and I have heard of this operation before. I just didn't know it was called Operation Mincemeat. And
What,
go
what
ahead.
was the original name of it that was like super obvious? I forgot.
uh,
It was
uh,
Operation Trick the Nazis into thinking we're invading Greece. It was a
yeah,
bit on the
yes,
nose.
it was called something else though, and then they changed it to mincemeat because of the body, the dead body.
right.
So it was I have little notes right here, but I don't think I wrote it down. I can't remember it, but when they kept saying it in the movie last night, I was like, I didn't know that, and that's actually kind of funny.
Operation Decepticon or something.
I'm really curious.
When was the first time you had heard of this story, Jack?
Years ago, and like I think it was today I learned on a Reddit post or something where they dressed a dead dude up as an agent, and that's the reason why the defenses were lower at what the hell is it called,
Sicily.
Normandy, or was that a different dead body?
I don't think that
I don't know.
I don't think they did a dead body tactic like mincemeat for Operation Fortitude for the invasion of Normandy, or
Ah,
maybe
No,
they did.
Normandy. They did all the inflatable tanks,
Hmm.
which I really wish they had kept those. Those would have made for some like great Halloween decorations. Just imagine like throwing an inflatable Sherman in your front yard.
That would be up all year round.
But um, kind of going into this, Sarah, what was your favorite part of this film?
My favorite part, it was interesting leading up. It was kind of slow moving throughout the whole film, but it got really interesting once they started to transport the body and take it to the sub and start the actual events of dropping William into the sea for, for everybody to find and for that whole thing to get on. So I think probably starting at the submarine scene, which is probably about three-fourths of the way through the movie.
We do appreciate good submarine scenes around
yeah.
here.
I mean, it was a small, but that's where I feel like it kicked off. Like it really kicked off the action part of it.
You mentioned the whole transporting the body thing, and that kind of takes a like an almost smaller role in the grand picture of this entire film. Um, but for me, I was the thing that kept kind of hitting me or was in the back of my head this entire film is like you have this entire film based upon creating a new identity for this individual, getting them dressed up, stuffing the pockets full of different things, moving the body, and then eventually actually placing them. But if I'm not mistaken, this took course over like 2 months, and the thing that kept nagging me in the back of my head is like, could you imagine just like the obvious like decomposition and decay thing? Like I know they explained it in the whole like, oh, we're going to throw them in the freezer basically, but I couldn't imagine just having like a body on standby for months on end while you're planning this entire thing.
Yeah.
Well, the dead body's got all the time in the world.
That's,
Very,
well,
yeah,
not,
Barry said that it's not going anywhere.
His schedule's cleared.
It's very true.
Man, what are the odds that God, what was her rank? Well, anyway, one of your coworkers, kind of, but not really boyfriends, looks exactly like the dead corpse we're gonna bamboozle the Nazis with.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's
Gene.
yeah. So Gene.
Gene.
Yeah. So that actually did happen in real mincemeat, but it wasn't one of Gene's. It wasn't an American soldier. It was actually another. I actually have his name right here. It was actually Captain Ronnie Reed of M15. That's whose photo they used. But in the movie, they used Gene's boy.
It makes
Can't.
for an interest
Yeah, it
more.
makes for an
Yeah.
interest. Again, we have to remember that when we watch these movies, that they're movies. Like that's a big
Suspension
thing.
of disbelief is our word for the day.
Yeah. So it's yeah, but I'm even when it comes to movies like this, if they kind of change a little bit, like instead of doing, saying it was an M15 Ronnie Reed versus I keep saying M15 um or
MI6.
MI no, it's MI5, sorry. I had
Damn.
MI6 in my head. It's an MI5 agent, but at least they got the part where they did actually use somebody who was of service back then. Sorry, I'm stumbling over my words. I think I've had way too much coffee today.
Oh, that's fair. See, I'm currently double fisting. I have a breakfast tea as well as some iced coffees, so I it's an interesting flavor combination.
Yeah.
And I got nice cold Fresca.
I love Fresca.
It's amazing.
What one are you drinking?
Grapefruit citrus.
That's my favorite. That's the only kind I drink. I literally drink it every day. Yay
Wasn't
for
there
Fresca!
Hell yeah. Wasn't there a black cherry one? I like the black cherry
The
one.
black cherry is good. The grapefruit's really bad. Sorry, this has nothing to do with Operation Mincemeat, but I'm so happy
Oh no, we
somebody else
usually
drinks
talk
Fresca.
about what we usually talk about what we drink around this time for the discussion.
Yeah.
I remember
like
what was the Walmart brand of Fresca? It was like Clear. It was just called Clear or something.
Yeah.
I remember being thoroughly unimpressed by the Walmart brand of Fresca. Like I enjoy Fresca
that
myself,
tracks.
but I remember the Walmart being
I think it's called like it's Clear or Clear Choice or something or whatever. But their black cherry Clear Choice is never mind. Clear something. Their black cherry limeade is actually really really good, but it only comes out in the summer.
Huh. There was some gas stations around my town still have it, but there was a sugar-free, caffeine-free soda that Fanta rolled out for Halloween this year, and it was mystery flavored, but the common consensus online was that it was blood orange. That shit was my jam. Especially like the no sugar, no caffeine part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But as cruel as God is, nothing can last under his gaze.
You just have to wait till next Halloween.
If they roll it out for next Halloween.
Then you gotta do what I do. You buy in bulk when you know it's gonna go out of season.
Yeah, like Baja Blast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're like buying all of it. I just did
That's
that
honestly
with Reese's peanut butter cups.
It's honestly what I do every summer is because that's when Mountain Dew will release Baja Blast like actually in cans, so you can you can have it at home and don't have to go to Taco Bell every other day.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the summer, I always buy like several cases of it so I can hopefully mitigate the cost of fast food. But I think that kind of, speaking of fast food, I think that kind of rolls into the next point that I wanted to hit on, which was a small moment in this film, but one that I greatly enjoyed. And I think it's something that we don't really see a lot in war films, which is rationing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you guys, but I love seeing the scene where you have, kind of more upper crust, you know, British society people gathering around the dinner table, having their like after dinner speeches in fine china with just cans of spam plopped onto their china.
Yeah, up until that, you wouldn't have even guessed a war was going on with how jovial they were, just how they were partying.
Yeah, I think the spam when I saw that on the very fancy dinner party, I thought that was pretty funny. And you gotta think about it. People did still go out back then and celebrate and have dinner parties. They were at war. They were pretty much thinking they're like, well, we're just gonna live life because they thought they all were gonna die. I mean, in all reality, if that was me back then, I'd be like, I'm gonna live it up. I'm gonna go out and enjoy myself because I don't know when a bomb is gonna pop on this city and I'm no longer gonna be here or whatever. But thought it was yeah, the spam on the fancy china was definitely,
Classic.
it was classic, but it was real. It most likely did happen back then. I mean, because they all were on rations.
Absolutely. And I think it's, like I said, usually, it's a little off topic, but take another kind of like home front movie, which we've previously had a debate whether or not it's a war movie, but a League of Their Own, which follows women's baseball leagues during World War II. That's an entirely home front kind of film. And in that film, we really don't see any kind of rationing at all. So, like, having this brief moment of that in this, spy slash war film, I think it definitely adds character to the film.
Hmm. Well, I mean, and also, this war didn't come to American shores, so we didn't have the trials and tribulations that the British or anybody else had. So seeing them still enjoying life with the rationing and making the best of what they were put in, um, was definitely kind of, I don't know, a little humbling and nice, I guess, in a way to see. I know that may sound weird, but
Right. But I think in that scene, it also adds kind of a nice, like, nod, or it also has a nod to to a funny kind of joke that I enjoyed in this film, which was before the dinner scene, our main character, Ewan, I can never I feel like I can never say that name correctly,
yeah,
even though it's kind of a common British name. But uh,
Ewan Montague.
so he's reading a spy thriller to his son before the dinner party, and then later on we get the we make fun of the like gas Marvel moments type deal where they're like, Agent Fleming, what are you doing? It's like, oh, it's the guy. uh you know I thought it was I thought it was fun seeing the author of James Bond just kind of as a
Cameo.
ancillary ancillary background character. Can't wait to see him in Operation Mincemeat 2,
Yeah.
Electric Boogaloo. But
Mince harder.
Well, actually, he was, because when they said Ian Fleming, I was like, wait, what? I don't know this. So of course I had to do what every history nerd does, and we go on Google rabbit holes. And he actually was part of Mincemeat. He was the assistant to one of the naval commanders, um, who wrote the Trout Memo, which is what Mincemeat is based on. But he was like the assistant doing all the typing and stuff, and so I think in a way Mincemeat kind of inspired his James Bond books in a way, but I didn't get that far into a rabbit hole. It was like 11:30 at night last night and I wanted
right.
to go to sleep. But it's true,
Did,
Ian Fleming was semi part of Mincemeat, which is super insane.
didn't wasn't there a scene towards the end too where they're like, "What are you doing? Writing a spy story?"
Yeah.
While
Oh,
they're waiting for the results.
I
I,
love that because it's like, who isn't writing a book right now?
I was just
Like,
gonna say that the long joke is like, gosh, is everybody? What's his name? I can never say his name right, but Charles, Clo Clomondley, Ewan's other counterpart in Mincemeat, but
yeah,
he was like saying throughout the film, everybody's writing a book. Gosh, are you an author? Like, are you an author too? Everyone's writing a book. So
it's kind of like the modern day equivalent to that is like, what Navy SEAL isn't currently writing a book? I should probably keep my mouth shut before like my windows blow out and they take me out or
don't.
something. But
Oh, you're fine.
I think you can take them.
mm,
Yes, definitely.
Nah, but speaking of the Trout memo, what did we think about? Obviously, they presented the Trout memo to Winston Churchill, and he famously says, "I hate fish." What do we think of the portrayal of Churchill in this film?
No, I didn't like it. I'm sorry. I
You weren't a fan?
I wasn't a fan. The I just watched oh gosh, what is the Darkest Hour? I just watched that, and then I watched another Churchill movie that had I am completely spacing names right now, but I watched two of them. They were just absolutely brilliant. And then I don't know, he was just like sloppy and not like I don't know. I didn't like the portrayal of Churchill.
He definitely wasn't a Gary Oldman.
He wasn't a Gary Oldman, and he wasn't a Brian Cox, which Brian Cox is the other um, Churchill movie I watched just not even that long ago, and they were so amazing. But I don't know, this guy just I don't know. We got spoiled with Brian Cox and Gary Oldman, so I don't feel like anybody else can like compete.
I definitely like when he first showed up on screen. I remember my first thought was like, "Is this supposed to be Churchill?" And then they
Me
confirmed
too.
it. I was like,
Me too.
I was like,
This toad.
I don't know.
I
It's
was
just a
like,
weird cat. I feel like they could have done better. Like I don't know, but that's just me.
yeah, they could have chose maybe a better acting choice for it. I just I think regardless of actor, like when you take the person out, like when you try to portray the personality of Churchill, it always gives me a kick though. Like I can't. I always find myself laughing like anytime Churchill says something, especially like in the movie Darkest Hour. Like Darkest, like this is going to sound terrible, but Darkest Hour was almost like a comedy to me,
Hmm.
just because of how much I love Churchill's personality.
We watched that
Would you
together, didn't we?
Dark when it originally came out?
Yeah, we went to the theater together.
I think so because we were still in college when that came out.
Yeah,
We
Vermilion.
should we should get around to watching that sometime
Yeah. I thought you were about to
again.
say we need to get around to going to the theater again, and I was about to agree.
Go to the theater in Vermilion, South Dakota.
Yeah, specifically that
Okay,
one.
okay.
Or Yankton, I'm flexible.
Eh,
Or Sioux Falls.
you're really grasping for straws here, aren't you?
Just making sure we have options.
Okay. Um. So speak like going into the other like British wartime films. I feel like that's something that's kind of slowly gained in popularity because obviously we had Darkest Hour come out as well as Dunkirk and The Imitation Game. Do we think that this kind of falls well within that like recent pantheon that Hollywood's kind of been trying to build?
What do you mean?
I feel like for the longest time, the British have kind of been ignored in Hollywood films when it comes to World War II, and it seems like in a like the last decade, Hollywood's really kind of turned the corner and
Oh, okay. Oh, I see what you're
reversed that.
yeah, I see what you're saying. I feel like back in the day, when we had The Battle of Britain, A Bridge Too Far, it was we had amazing films about the British back in the day in Hollywood, and then I feel like they did get lost along the way differently, and now that they're coming back out again, like you said with The Darkest Hour and Dunkirk and The Imitation Game, great movie and great story. uh I feel like we're hearing and Netflix is coming out with a lot more British and other country stories about World War II versus just the United States. I feel like sometimes people think like the US was like the only people who were in World War II sometimes when it comes to movies. Uh but I feel like it's getting better, and they're coming out with great movies, too. So
We call that the we have a recurring joke here, which is I don't know if you're familiar with Team America World Police, but that is we call that the America fuck yeah phenomenon.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh man, I was obsessed with that movie when it came out. Me
Such
and
a
my friends
great
watched it
movie.
all the time.
I feel like this film it's a great standalone film, like in and of its own right. But I feel like if you watch The Imitation Game first and then you watch this, I feel like there's a lot of little parts of this film that make way more sense, or like just like one-off lines that they say that click for you a lot easier if you were to watch that other film.
Yeah, I can see totally see what you're saying. Because a lot of well, no, not a lot of people. I don't want to speak for a lot of people 'cause I don't know, but I know people don't really know the stories of like the deception tactics on the British side and everything that happened and the Enigma machine and um everything that happened like within the imitation game and also Operation Mincemeat. But if you're not familiar that in World War II there were deception tactics like Operation Husky and Barclay and you know all that stuff, I think Operation Mincemeat might be a little bit confusing or far-fetched for people to believe. But if you're somebody who knows a little bit about, Operation Mincemeat and these tactics, I feel like it is a really good movie. It's not some big blockbuster, action-packed, whatever. It's a logical thinking, storytelling movie. Um, but it does go a lot within the imitation game because I was around the same period, and the people at was it Bart uh,
Bletchley Park or
Bletchley Park, they helped during Operation Mincemeat with getting coded messages from deciphered from the Germans that, that's one reason that they knew that the body, you know, was found. So it's
right.
they definitely the movies do coincide for sure. And if you watch both of them together, you're like, wow, this is pretty crazy.
I did appreciate, and you kind of alluded to this, that they didn't like they didn't over convolute this movie. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's some parts where you could kind of get a little lost, but I felt in the grand scheme of, especially like, this is definitely more of a spy film than it is a war film. It's a spy film set in a war setting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I thought they did a great job of keeping the facts and the story kind of in a straight and narrow path and in a concise manner. Because
Mm-hmm.
I think that can tend to be a downfall of espionage films, is they get over convoluted with their twists and turns, and M. Night Shyamalan, like, what a twist type deal. But
Mm-hmm. Which I mean, that's with a lot of espionage, movies that are fiction, they want to keep you on the edge of your seats, but what I liked about Operation Mincemeat in regards to that is how they did do so much great information and a lot of great details, and they did it obviously chronologically, and they didn't really blow things out of proportion or Hollywoodified it or whatever. And in some parts, making these plans and leading up to this operation, it's going to be a little bit boring and a little bit slow because there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff and approval from uppers, the upper people, um, to approve this stuff. But I think they were really detailed with everything and how it played out. I think they did really well on.
I, you know, like you said, there are moments that or there are parts of the story that had the opportunity to be kind of boring, and obviously one of the ways that, like, Hollywood combats that is either they blow it out of proportion, or they add in a part of the story that doesn't really exist for the sake of keeping you interested.
I know where you're
So that
going.
kind of lead so that leads me into our love story of this film, which
Yeah.
is, it seems like a very, as far as love stories go, it's a very muted one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like, you can, I think I personally, I didn't mind it that much because it kind of added a tension to the film, but it wasn't like it wasn't like the Pearl Harbor example of like I can only think of you. Like it's it's
Hmm.
something to divert your attention in the slower parts of the film. What do you think of that part of this story?
So it didn't bother me. Sometimes love stories in war movies bother me, because that's not why I'm I'm watching the movie. I want to know about like the operation or the battle or whatever that's going on. Um, but I didn't think it was that big of a deal. It added a dynamic to it that wasn't over the top, but it created more depth for the character. And it was funny. I went on IMDb because I love IMDb because I love movies and everything. And I was reading the reviews, and people were like, they could have done without the love story, this love story. And it was before I even watched Mincemeat. I was like, oh man, they put a love story in it. This is, I hope this doesn't suck. And then I watched it and I was like, this wasn't really even a love story. It was just about how these people got along, how Leslie and Ewan and everybody got along. And yes, there was a little bit of chemistry, and one fancied, they fancied each other or whatever, but it didn't take away from the movie. It just added a little bit of, I don't
It's
know,
kind of like the
substance or something. I don't know. Character
yeah,
development.
right. I I find that fun. Obviously, the internet complains about everything, but
Yeah.
I find it funny that they're like that you mentioned that there are people who are like, we didn't need a love story in this, and it's like the love story in this amounts to kind of just like overt flirtation, and that's about it.
Yeah, it literally is. It's like, I think you're cute. I respect you and trust you and all that stuff. Like, there was no love story. There was no kissing. There was no like, let me take you on a date. There wasn't anything like you're the love of my life. There was nothing like that. It was just showed a chemistry between people like that. So I don't know what love story. Then again, I never take reviews on IMDb super seriously because some people just have no idea what they're talking about. Um, because half the
I
time when there's like a really low star rated movie, I'm like, well, I gotta watch this. I'm like, were they watching the same movie? This was fantastic.
I also go to IMDb because
Hmm.
I love checking out the like the goofs section
Uh-huh.
to to just see like if I caught anything or if I missed anything. And I checked the goof section on IMDb for this film, and there is some pedant on there that's like, when you see the scene of Madrid, Spain, there are more palm trees there than there usually are, and I'm like, what kind of fact is that? Like
Yeah, it's
of all the things you can complain about in a film, the fact that there are more palm trees in a city than you would expect is your complaint.
it's
Like
I know the trivia and the goofs are pretty funny. I actually have some of them pulled up right now on IMDb, but it's it's funny what people complain about. And I know as a history nerd, sometimes when I watch war films, I'll look at, continuity and, you know, stuff if, uniforms and placement and certain things and, you know, things to complain about. But I'm sorry, complaining about palm trees about in Spain is stupid. Like, that's like really far fetched.
I will say something that I don't know if I would necessarily classify it as learning, but something that kind of brought to the forefront of my attention I never thought about was like, obviously I think in the normal telling of World War II we hear about like the Spanish Civil War prior to World War II and how like Germany tested out a bunch of their technology there before they started their stuff, but because of their quote unquote neutrality or uninvolvement,
Hmm.
they're usually left out of the story of World War II. So it's very interesting to see that even though they were air quotes not involved, see what wartime Spain was like in this
Hmm.
story.
Hmm.
So, what did you think of the addition of Spain in this story?
Well, the addition of Spain is very important, but and then again, you don't. hear about it in World War II because they were neutral. They were a, nationalist. They were a country of that the Nazis had a nice little, you know, vacation homes in. It definitely added to it, but it also showed because I know that at first they wanted to completely return documents back to England. They didn't want to hand over everything uh, to the Nazis yet. And so it was this interesting dynamic of seeing what happens in a quote unquote neutral zone, a neutral territory, even when it's overtaken by uh, the enemy. But I thought it was a good necessity addition. But you don't see stuff like that in movies, so or read about it.
I also think it was great because this is where we actually see our like spy on spy kind of stuff actually happening,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to the like back in England where it's all hypothetical kind of thinking type stuff
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
versus actually seeing it in play.
Yeah. See. Yeah. Once the William was discovered, like then you see the different tiers of the spies and the espionage and everything going on. The only, I mean, pretty much only in the beginning, really, that's only talked about spies was them really making it a fact that they thought Ewan's brother was a communist sympathizer and he was a spy for Russia, um, and all that stuff. But actually, sorry, just thinking about that, there was a scene with Churchill that actually I really, really liked when he explained this, and it was when Jason Isaacs' character was talking to him about Operation Mincemeat and about how he doesn't think he thinks it should be shelved because they're getting close to Ewan's brother, who they think is a communist spy, a communist sympathizer, and he thinks that's more important than Operation Mincemeat. And Winston Churchill says, uh, Russia's for a war for tomorrow or something. Like we can't focus on a war with Russia right now. We'll eventually be in a war with Russia, but just not today because they're our allies for the moment. But I thought that scene, as much as I didn't like the guy who played Churchill, that was a really great scene. Um, I don't know why I enjoyed that scene and why it popped in my head so much,
I
but
think I think it is a great scene in and of itself. I think also like it kind of points to one aspect of this film I didn't really enjoy, which is the additional subterfuge, if I'm saying that right, of them like, hey, we need you to look after this dude's brother. Like, I want you to look after this dude's brother
oh,
because of
mm-hmm.
my own like weird little vendettas. But like, it's like watch after him, but then nothing ever comes of it. We don't actually see him like actually spying or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Usually, like in those types of movies, and when that plot gets added in, like you see them snooping or spying or reporting back, but literally, it was a story plot that literally nothing played out in it.
like,
I didn't even
like
think about
Gene did.
it. Yeah.
Like Gene did more snooping of Ewan's letters to his wife than uh, the I can't remember his name, but his of Ewan's counterpart snooping
Charles,
into
yeah.
Ivor. Yeah,
Yeah.
Charles. Like Gene was doing way more spying than Charles was, and it
That is
wasn't
so interesting that you said that because literally I had never thought about it because they kept trying to make it a plot and then it would fizzle out and then I just kept forgetting about it in the movies. Like, oh, that's so true. That's kind of a pointless plot in a way.
I also I appreciated that scene just because I love Jason Isaacs as
Me
an
too.
actor.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's fantastic. I also love the fact that even when he's a good guy, he's still the bad guy.
Yeah,
Like it it doesn't matter. Like he is always a bad guy.
I
Like
know. That's so true. You're like, he's on the good side. He's doing what he needs to do. He's making sure there are no spies amongst these operations, so he's doing what he needs to do, but you still look at him as a bad guy, even though he's, you know, a good guy all around.
Jack, who is your favorite actor or character in this?
Jason Isaacs. I didn't know
It's
Lucius Malfoy served in World
Yeah,
War II.
I love it.
I feel like Lucius would have been on the if we're going with Harry Potter world, I feel like he probably would have been on the side of the Nazis, but
Yeah. I don't know. I think he would have been on mm,
Interesting.
that is interesting.
maybe he would have been Italian fascist or something.
I think more Italian maybe. I think he would have been that, but then I could see him being part of the Soviets in regards to having the long, they were playing the long game a
Yeah.
little bit. They're like, we're gonna side with the people who are gonna win, so we get what we want in the end. And so I could also see him doing some sort of that too in the as well. But
I I don't know why it made me think of this, but so going back to the actual like invasion of Sicily, obviously the entire Operation Mincemeat is predicated on the we need to divert German resources away from Sicily,
mm-hmm.
um, because obviously they are the primary fighting force that we're concerned about. Um, but I feel like it, aside from diverting Germans away, I feel like there's a part of this film that they could have hit on that, and granted, it might have been just like a little bit of a dig, but um, you know, there's still the entire like Italian forces in Italy and Sicily. Uh, but they never really hit on like why we're not concerned about the Italians as an enemy. They're just like, just get the Germans out of here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just really wanted them to kind of go into the like, even if it was a singular line, just be like, yeah, the Italians are really terrible at fighting. We're not concerned about them
Mm-hmm.
because like I think that's another thing that tends to get glanced over in the history of World War II is like we always acknowledge like the Italians like fighting in North Africa or obviously fighting in the Italian campaigns, but they were such a like ineffectual fighting force.
Mm-hmm.
Like like one of my favorite stories, and granted it was a little bit pre World War II, it was like 35 or 36. But I remember when I was in college, one of my professors telling this story where the Italians are trying to colonize East Africa, so like Somalia and all that areas. And the local Somalis were able to destroy an entire tank force literally with sticks. Like they ran up to these tanks and like flipped them over with these super long sticks and set them on fire. And I just like that's how bad at fighting they were. And I wanted someone in this film to acknowledge how like that's why we need the Germans to not be here, because if all the Allies have to deal with is
Mm-hmm.
the Italians, then we're fine.
Yeah. Well, I totally get what you're saying, and all that. Sorry, my dog is moving around. Um, no, I totally understand that too, and I didn't even think about the Italians during that movie either because Germany was such a huge triumphant force that I feel like people were like, the Italians are just following the Germans, like like we don't need to worry about them. But I totally agree with that. I did not know that about those tank stories about the Italians.
Oh
I'm
yes,
gonna have to go on a
but
go to the
just
Somalians and the
just
Italians.
yeah, just Google Somalians flipping Italian tanks, and it will bring up some great articles. Like
That is,
it's just ridiculous.
yeah. Well, I mean, and also if you think about it, like, and this is just we were again the Italians were our enemies in the beginning of World War II. Then they were our allies in the end of World War II. So they kind of really, it sometimes seems like they just kind of went with what was going to benefit them more, or at least survive. Um, Whereas the Nazis just wanted, they didn't care which way the wind blew. They were just going full force. So, um, maybe that's why, or I don't even know what the point of me saying that was. I totally lost track. My brain moves faster than my mouth, and my mouth moves faster than my brain. So we're just gonna stop
Oh, that's
talking.
fine. I will say um, something I wish, additionally going into the whole Italian thing, I think, they did explain it a bit, kind of the like, this person has to get the documents so he can pass it on to this person who will translate it to Hitler. I wish they had gone into that just a little bit more. Like we know the order that it has to happen, and we hear yes that it did happen, but I would have liked to have actually seen like German guy actually having conversation and handing stuff off. Like, but I suppose this tends to be more focused on like Ewan's perspective, if you will.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. I think it would have been very interesting to see more of what happened once the body was discovered and how these came into German, how the documents did go into German hands and how these other spies, something Klaus, I can't remember his name, but all these other spies that they had in Spain. And I would have loved to see a scene because when they got all the documents back from Spain after they were returned, they looked at the letter, the big letter that was talking about the operation where the invasion was allegedly going to be happening. And they were like, it wasn't opened. So they didn't read it. So these documents failed. But then they realized that no, they did open the documents. What they did is they dried out the document. They somehow heated the stamp, dried it out, and then when they refolded it, they got it wet again, and that's when they returned the documents. But I would have loved to see how they read all the documents and got all the information that the Germans needed and then returned it back, hopefully that they wouldn't know that they have all the information. I thought that would have been a really cool point. But like you said too, Operation Mincemeat was about the Ewan and Charles and them creating it, but it would have been cool if they did maybe like a 2-part movie series and then went more in depth into the actual opera,
Right.
the discovery part of it too.
It could have been like a 3 or 4 part miniseries. It's Netflix. They can do
Yeah.
whatever they want.
Yeah.
We're not sending 10,000 men to their death on an eyelash.
Oh, the eyelash was gone. But then again,
It was a nice touch.
that was a nice touch. They did have some witty comments in there, the eyelash thing, and then, are you a writer too? Like they had little nice, funny little jokes in there too as well.
I, you know, there's this one part. It wasn't meant to be a joke, but I laughed at it, and maybe it's just a morbid sense of humor. But have you ever seen uh, Dracula Dead and Loving It with Leslie Nielsen in it?
Oh, a long time ago, I think.
So, but you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
It's a typical Leslie Nielsen film. It's a parody of a classic story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there's a scene in this film. It's when they have uh, the body on the morgue table, and you can see the one Spanish guy who's just like freaking out because he's like, "What do you mean you're a drowning specialist? Like you're not the local guy." Like, and
Oh,
he's just trying everything in the world just to like speed things up and like rush it and like don't think too hard about this. And like as he's trying to convince this coroner to like just rubber stamp it, he cuts in and starts the autopsy, and he like yanks out the intestines, and they look like sausage links. And I burst out laughing because it reminded me of the scene from this Leslie Nielsen film where it's the exact same thing, except like in the Leslie Nielsen film, it's like 30 feet of like
oh.
sausage links that they're pulling out of a person.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And I was like, this is the most graphic and also the most unbelievable part of this film.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what did you think, Jack, of the corpse?
Made me hungry.
For some minced meat.
Nah.
I know. I'm so funny.
But yeah, I did like that fast talking he did. Like, for fuck's sake, he's dead.
It's
Where the,
it's hot and it's hot and smelly in here.
Yeah.
And then you get the coroner who's like, and like
He's like,
it's like,
is
don't
nothing new
deny
for
me
me.
this.
Yeah.
the entire Spain sequence where they wanted to act like they wanted to get the documents back, but then they didn't want it back. Then they had to pretend like they were trying to get it back from the Nazis while they're making sure the Nazis get it.
It was it was
Stressful.
yeah, it was very stressful, and I actually believe from what I read, I'm not like some expert on this operation or anything whatsoever, but I think it actually kind of went along those lines. Like it did actually, in fact, go like back and forth, and then like it was kind of like I think for a while they thought that the Germans are never going to get this, and then it went back and forth a lot. But it is pretty stressful. Like, what are they going to do? Are they Spain going to give it to them? Not going to give it to them? Like, what's going on?
I think um like there are definitely quite a few stressful moments in this film. And one stressful moment I wasn't expecting to have is like near the beginning when they're like, okay, let's get the easy part of this done. Let's get ourselves a body. And then it's literally like a 5 or 10 minute sequence of them going from like morgue to morgue. And they're like, where's this guy's
Where's
legs?
his legs? Yeah, that's great, but where's his legs?
And then
Oh.
they, we finally get we meet Glindor. And I appreciated the little kind of side scene where we still see him alive being taken care of the nurse as he's like slowly dying of poisoning. And I saw the thing, or I heard the line where they're like, oh, he poisoned himself with bread. And I had to pause the movie and look it up because I'm like, who has ever committed suicide by bread before? And
Mm-hmm.
I had to look it up, and I was like, that was just the assumption back then, but most likely, like, he was a homeless individual, and a common form of pest control back in the day was just poisoning bread so that rats and mice would eat the bread and then eventually die off themselves. So what you actually come across is this dude was probably just like so incredibly hungry and starving that he just like it's like bread in the street, eats
Mm-hmm.
it, and then ends up, coming to his fate, which honestly just sounds terrible. Like
Yeah. Yeah,
like
they
his the entire story of him just seems like um I was going to say this Glindor's life seems just like an entire tragedy,
it
really.
is, and I'm so glad. I'm actually glad that they, gave him more of a, who he was before he became William Martin, and served his country because he did serve his country, and he was a as they called it back in the day, a vagrant. Um, and they gave
I think Wikipedia has him listed as
oh
a
a tramp,
tramp,
yeah,
which sounds
different
yeah,
verbiage, yeah,
that sounds way
yeah. But he was,
worse.
I mean, he was just a homeless guy, and I like that they gave him. They did a little bit more, and and then also after what 40 something years after Operation Mincemeat finally happened, they released his true identity and gave him a proper burial and and all that stuff. And so technically, in a way, he sacrificed himself for
I
without knowing it for the greater good.
right. I love that it's something that a lot of films does where like we get the end of the film like it pans across the cemetery or it like zooms in on a monument somewhere. And I thought in this film when they show Glinder's grave and his headstone, I thought it was shot a little differently than we
Hmm.
usually do see in other films, but I thought it was very well done, and I thought like it wasn't too over the top, like it was kind of respectful, kind of like I think the opposite end of the spectrum is like take Saving Private Ryan for example, where the end of the film they're in the American
Mm-hmm.
cemetery in France, and it's got the like faded, distressed American flag like flowing in the
Mm-hmm.
background, like, and Brad Pitt, or not Brad Pitt, Matt Damon. There we go. Matt Damon's like, "Tell me I'm a good man." It's like I like this much more muted
Mm-hmm.
version of showing an actual grave.
Yeah. It was it didn't it didn't have the fanfare that most quote unquote war movies have. And I think that just showed the amount of respect that Ewan and Charles had for, you know, and Gene had for this operation. It didn't need to be, what's it called, made bigger than it truly was. They were just, we were doing part of our job, blah 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 type of thing. So
I love the fact that in the end kind of like title cards and whatnot, it talked about how like you mentioned they were just doing their job. Like Charles like never
mm-hmm.
talked about it again after the fact, and like Ewan did write a book about the event, but it was like 30 or 40 years after it happened. So like there was very little like security concerns at
I
that
don't,
point.
well, they made a movie based on his book in 1956 called the man that the man that never was. um
Okay, so maybe like
it
10,
was,
10
yeah,
years I
I
was
don't think,
off.
but then again, but now that I'm thinking about it, was that movie, I haven't seen that movie, but I guess a lot of people say that that movie is really intense with operation, like the that part of Operation Mincemeat that was lacking in this film. um but maybe it wasn't based on his book. Maybe I read that wrong, but I don't. But anyways, sorry. Yeah, but he, yeah. I love at the end of movies when they say what happened to everybody, after the war or said thing they were a part of.
I'm glad to see that like everything worked out between like Ewan and his
Mhm.
wife at the end. And I don't know if that was another dramatized part of this movie, but like I thought that added another kind of interesting layer of just home life
Mhm.
during the war, which is the like I'm sending my it was a very common thing for people who like lived in London, which is I'm sending my family away so they're not in immediate
Mhm.
danger and whatnot. And obviously they added you know the marital strife to that part
Mhm.
of the story, but um I thought, that's something else that we don't really see very often in
Mhm.
war films, is, and especially like British war films, because I think this is going to be, I can't believe I'm mentioning this film in this format, but the only time I can think of where I've seen people sending their families off to avoid the Battle of Britain, or, the ramifications of living in London during World War II, is
Oh.
Narnia.
I was just about to bring that up.
Yeah, because that's like the very beginning of Narnia, is the kids are shipped away from London, and that's where they go on their adventures. But yeah, it's a very glanced over
Mhm.
topic, but
I have never seen any of the Narnia series.
it's fine. The first one was just
Mhm.
okay, and everything after that
Yeah.
was but it depends on
Mhm.
what you're into. Um, what was your least favorite part of this film?
My least favorite part. I feel like, I guess it wasn't. Okay, if I had to choose like a specific plot line, it was Ewan's brother. I know we talked about this earlier, being the spy and adding that, a communist spy, and adding that pointless plot line, which in real life that was a thing. Like they were worried about that. He was a communist sympathizer at one point, but it just didn't. They kept trying to put it in, and it never went anywhere. So it kind of like made it semi annoying in a way. Like if you're gonna add a plot point, see it through. But I think the main
Right.
thing for me is not a specific scene. I just feel like they went a little too slow during the whole planning of the operation. And I know that's like a huge thing when planning an operation. They really need to get all the backstory and make sure that, it is it's gonna work. But I felt like it was just a little bit slow moving um in that regards, I guess. So it's not like a specific scene. I guess it's more of like the plot points that I didn't like fully
That's fair.
enjoy.
Jack, what was your least favorite aspect of this film?
The glasses guy. What the hell was his name?
Charles?
Charles?
Yeah, the guy that lives with his mom. Just the whole romantic subplot thing where he's jealous is just, and he just acted like a weirdo.
I will say I cringed pretty hard when he first meets Jean like in the movie theater and is like he's like trying to hit on her. It's like, did you know that this main feature is a real story? And it's like,
my
oh
my
god,
my favorite thing is,
like,
we work together. We work together. You were like, she's like, yeah,
I've seen
I
you in the
know.
office. I purposely wait till you walk away from the water cooler. Oh, but I think it is about that time that we rate this film. And Sarah, we usually like to do a 1 to 5 rating. We don't do stars because stars are boring. Uh, so we usually do something that is pertinent to the film or something that embodies the film. Hot bodies didn't mean that to.
I don't get it.
You're funny. Although Jack, I think the subtitle under your name is leading us to the probably a perfect metric for this film, which is the and unless anybody has a better idea, but the secret agent hand job, uh, which was not something I was expecting in this film,
Me neither.
but it made
I
for a
hope it
funny
happened in
line.
real life.
I found the line that preceded it kind of funny. Is like, I can reach out to this guy, but he takes some careful
Yeah.
handling, and then it's like, oh. So unless anybody has a different metric they would like to use, I think 1 to 5 secret agent hand jobs. Jack, how about 1 to 5? What do you think?
4 out of 5 agent hand jobs.
That's
Solid
fair
4.
enough. Solid. Is there anything that would bump this up to a 5 for you?
More in-depth autopsy.
More, maybe
Less
like
Charles, maybe
like a NCIS like top-down view autopsy type deal,
yeah,
or maybe not, like sausage link intestines.
actual sausage.
And Sarah, how about you on a scale of 1 to
1 to
5?
5, I would probably rate it a 4.1.
4.1.
You just always gotta one up me.
Just by one. Hey man, I grew up playing The Price is Right, or watching The Price is Right, so
There it is.
You always gotta do it by 1 penny.
Right. I think Jack, I have to agree with you. I'll give this 4 secret agent hand jobs. I'm not sure exactly what would push this into a 5 category for me. I think it's a super solid film. It was very interesting. Obviously, like, there could have been a better Winston Churchill, and maybe we get rid of certain aspects of it or what have you. But I I greatly enjoy it. I think it's worth the watch. Despite it being a very good film, I don't know. This is not a film that I think I would watch on a yearly basis. Like there are definitely films that like I will put on at least once a year to watch because they're
Mm-hmm.
just like that good. This is a really good movie, but I don't know the next time I would put it on TV for the sake of just
Mm-hmm.
watching it. So for that reason, I'll give it
Yeah.
4.
I think those are all really good points. It was a good film. It was nicely done. I d- the only thing I wish they would have done better was if they would have touched more on after the body was found and everything that went into that. That would have made it a 5, 100%.
Well, Jack, what does the people at Rotten Tomatoes give this?
I'm glad you asked, John. It has an 83% tomometer rating from the critics and a 66% from the audience. I can
Well,
I didn't actually open up any of the audiences, but I can guess what their critiques were. Like, oh, it was too
Mm-hmm.
slow, the romantic subplot, and not enough
too
action.
many
Blah 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 blah.
too many
Too many
palm
palm
trees
trees, yeah.
and
Too many.
Ah,
I got to go with the critics on this one.
yeah, I think the critics are more
yeah,
accurate
I
on
do
this one.
too.
It's it's interesting because I don't think there's really a middle ground when it comes to like
Mm-hmm.
Netflix films. I think either Netflix like hits it out of the park, like in this film, or like All Quiet on the Western Front, or it's kind of like the opposite end of the spectrum where you're like, oh, that you were just like throwing stuff at the
Yeah.
wall, weren't you? Which for this being like a near end of COVID, we're producing everything and
Mm-hmm.
anything film. Like it turned
I
out
think so
very
too.
well.
I definitely think so too. They did their research um for this film, so which is good because like you said, sometimes Netflix just throws things on the wall and you're like, who was your technical advisor? Who was your on-site historian? Because that okay.
So, now that we've done our review and we've rated this, Sarah, I will give the floor to you to share any kind of social media pages you want the people to know about, any upcoming stuff you have, basically anything you want the people to know. The
Oh,
floor is
well,
yours.
um again, my name is Sarah. I'm the History Chick 1941. My main platform is Instagram. I do have a YouTube channel as well, but that is just history behind the page episodes that are re-uploaded on there. For that, I do have a Facebook, but I'm never on it. So Instagram, if you want to find me, Instagram. Instagram is where I'm at, the History Chick 1941. Stuff that's coming up for me. We're gonna get back to doing more episodes of History Behind the Page, and just kind of mellowing out until the after the first of the year. So I'm hoping to roll out some more content, different interviews, and different uh, what's it called, historical content in a different way. So that is
Right.
what I'm just kind of that's just what's kind of in the works for me.
Well, we're definitely looking forward to it. I remember the one of your more recent live feeds you did with JD and
Chris, yeah,
Chris from
and
vlogging
James
through
from Project Past. I love
vlogging through
those guys.
history.
They're amazing.
Yeah, yeah. We had JD on several
Mm-hmm.
months ago, and that was a great time
Yeah.
hanging out with him. So looking forward to the stuff you guys got coming up. Um, Jack, it is your turn this week, so please tell me what we're going to be watching, and please be gentle with me.
Oh, please be gentle with you.
Yes.
The guy that invited the dude that picked Pearl Harbor on wants mercy from me. uh, um, fine. Fuck. Platoon.
Ooh.
Platoon. All right. I can dig
One of my
it.
favorites.
All right.
And I
See,
think I
you
have a
did take it. You did take it easy on me.
I think I have a guest lined up too.
Oh, I cannot wait to hear who this will be.
I mean, it's nothing too exciting, but is yeah,
Like,
I'm looking
all
forward to
right.
this review.
Alrighty. Well, for next week, we'll be doing Platoon. For those of you at home, if you enjoyed this show, please go and give Sarah a follow. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review. The stars do matter. If you want additional content from us, we are on Instagram and Facebook under the Armchair Commanders podcast. We also have a Discord under the same name. If you want to find us on YouTube, we have a YouTube channel called History Apprentice. Jack, do you have anything else?
I donut.
All right. Well, thank you so much again, Sarah, for joining us. Until next time, I've been John.
And I'm Jack.
And we will catch you later.
Bye.